Hi,
Hi,
I'm Brianna,
I'm Cora.
and this is Roommate Activities.
Okay, tell the story.
So, when I was young, I lived on a farm, and on that farm, we did not have very many DVDs. We had, we had Sahara, the movie with Matthew McConaughey, and Happy Feet, pretty much. And my siblings loved Happy Feet, and I had to watch Happy Feet every day after school for a year, more than a year. And I hate Happy Feet to this day. One day after school, I'd had too much. I'd been pushed too far. I took the DVD out of the DVD player and I snapped it in half in front of my siblings' faces. And I threw it away. I had not seen the movie since 11 years until we decided to make
This video.
this video. Happy Feet is an animated classic.
It's a Oscar-winning film for Best Animated Feature. It beat out Monster House and Cars, so
So you know it's good.
it is well animated. It's a beautiful film, and it's really bad.
Yeah, there is some beautiful imagery in it, some beautiful scenery of the Antarctic.
I don't think we have any issues with the art.
No, I have no issues with the art. I think it's beautiful.
Our issues fall solely in the realms of theme and plot.
This movie is about a penguin named Mumble. Mumble is the progeny. Mumble is the progeny of Norma Jean and Memphis. Memphis was caring for the egg while Norma Jean was out fishing, which is something that real penguins do. And he dropped Mumble's egg in the snow, and that is basically the beginning of the movie. Mumble hatches, and he can't sing, but he can dance.
Yeah, the penguins all sing. They all have a heart song. It's how they find their mate. But Mumble can't do that. They try to teach him throughout the movie, but he's like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And other stuff happens.
Yeah, he can't be taught to sing.
Yeah.
He's tried. He tries to learn, but he just can't. And that's okay.
Yep. So we'll go through our issue with some of the themes, and then we'll take a more in-depth look at the plot at the end.
So, here are our themes. We have them written out for you. Human impact on the environment / penguin, singular. Religion. Sex. Sexuality. And aliens.
And
And
dropping
of the egg. Theme numero uno. I'm sorry, theme number 1. Human impact on the environment. So, what did we feel about this, Cora?
We thought that the theme of environmental impact was handled pretty poorly in this movie. It wasn't strongly introduced until the last maybe third of the movie at the most. There are hints of it in passing. The penguins and some other animals too mention a shortage of fish, which is the overfishing caused by humans. And also there's another character, Lovelace, who will bring up more in the religion and sexuality themes, but he has a plastic 6-pack ring around his neck that got stuck on him while he was swimming. But that's really the only hint of pollution or human environmental impact up until nearing the end, when Mumble sees a lot of trash in the water.
So this particular moral for us feels like an 11th hour moral. It feels last minute. It feels like they were like, we need to throw in something else. We need to throw in something about the environment to make people think. It really wasn't well done, and if it's not well done, it shouldn't be done at all.
It seemed like mostly they had those kind of like minor things with like the fish and the 6-pack that kind of hinted at it. And up until the end, I was like, oh, okay, they've got these like small messages about it, which is just kind of like a thing that they probably threw in, but they didn't want to make it too political for a kids' movie, so they didn't bring it up too much until the end, when it becomes the entire focus of the whole film. It's very odd. It's not really set up at all. It just kind of like is sprung on you.
Yeah, and there's a very uncomfortable scene, which is actually the scene before the final dance number that the penguins perform. It's quite a long scene of just humans, real life humans, not animated humans, real life humans arguing with each other over issues concerning the penguins. And some of the things they bring up are, why should we care about the penguins? They're just flightless birds on the bottom of the earth. And to that, the movie responds with silence. There is no reason brought up in the movie that we should actually care about the penguins other than that they're cute and they sing and they dance. And that's it. And that's even the reason why the humans save them. That's why the humans believe, in the movie, the humans believe that the penguins are worthy of being saved, because they show this scene of all the penguins dancing with Mumble, and they say, what are they doing? Are they trying to tell us something? And it's like, no. They're dancing.
They never really bring up the real reasons that we should care about penguins. Like, obviously we should care about all living creatures, and we shouldn't be destroying their natural habitats because they're living creatures and they deserve to be happy and healthy. But they never really talk about why this is important for the rest of the Antarctic, why it's important globally. They just care about the penguins. Even though other animals are shown, the only animals that they care about are that the humans care about are the penguins. And it doesn't really say why. It only is just like, oh, they're dancing. Let's stop fishing here.
And that is the reason that the humans do stop the fishing, and the fish come back in the end. So it's a happy ending. But it's not true in real life. Mm-hmm. Penguins don't sing and penguins don't dance. They are cute, but there are real life implications. I mean, there are real reasons why we should not be overfishing, why we should not be harming these animals.
We actually have a quote from the Smithsonian that I will go ahead and read right now, and we will put a link to the full article down below. Penguins, adults, young, and eggs, serve as food for predators such as leopard seals and seabirds in cold areas, along with foxes, leopards, and even crabs in warmer climates. By chasing after fish, squid, and krill, they affect prey populations wherever they hunt. They carry nutrients between land and sea and enrich both with their feces. Some burrowing species even modify the landscape as they dig nests in the ground.
So without penguins, the population of krill and fish would skyrocket, and without penguins, the populations of predatory animals like leopard seals and seabirds would plummet. You take out one key part of the food chain and you have a whole mess that we don't want to exist in our world. This is marketed as a children's movie. It was intended for children to watch, and one of the issues that we had with it was that children are never shown to be making the difference in this movie. Children are never shown to be powerful. They're never shown to
They're never shown to have an opinion. They're never shown recycling. They're never shown advocating for the penguins. The only thing that children are shown doing is noticing the penguins dancing. There's one little girl who initially sees Mumble dancing when he's trapped in a zoo, and she points it out to a bunch of adults who then make Mumble famous. And then there's a group of children shown around a television set watching all the penguins in the Antarctic dance. That is the extent of their role in the film. Children are not shown doing anything of real importance, which is a huge missed opportunity on the part of the film, really.
If this is going to be a children's movie, children should be empowered by the movie to make a difference. They should be empowered to say, you know, those penguins are an important part of our Earth and we should protect them. And
instead, this movie only shows adults being able to make decisions. It shows adults arguing about it, and it basically tells children, this is an issue that only adults can handle. Stay out of it.
For one of my classes, I read an article about two young ladies in the UK. their ages were 8 and 11, who decided that it was their responsibility to make a change for the better in our world. After learning that the harvesting of palm oil was destroying the natural habitat of orangutans, these 2 girls petitioned to stop the harvesting of palm oil and destroying the habitat of the orangutans. One of the major buyers of palm oil is actually Kellogg's. Kellogg's is a company that makes cereal, and millions of children eat this cereal. These girls were horrified to learn that the cereal that they eat every single morning was using palm oil, and that the process for harvesting palm oil was essentially killing the orangutans. So they started a petition, and their petition got 500,000 signatures. And through this petition, they gained the attention of the Kellogg's executives, who met with the girls, and they released a statement afterwards saying that they admired the sisters' passion for the orangutans, and said the company was committed to protecting forests by using sustainably sourced palm oil. So this is a story about 2 girls, 2 real young girls, 8 and 11, who made a big difference in the lives of the orangutans.
Mm-hmm.
And these girls were empowered, and they did make a change, and they did it by themselves. It was their petition that gained all these signatures, and it was their
call to action that enacted this change.
Mm-hmm. And we'll put the link for this article below.
Yep. But the reason that the story is important is that if you show situations like this on screen in movies that are viewed by a large audience, then you could empower other children to make big changes in their world too.
Another thing is the food chain is shown in a very negative light.
Mm-hmm.
We see the predators as, evil creatures.
Mm-hmm. They have killer whales, leopard seals, skua birds, and to a lesser extent, elephant seals, and they're all shown as antagonists in this film. And they're all incredibly important parts of the Antarctic food chain, the Antarctic ecosystem, and it is just strange that seemingly the reason that we would want to protect penguins is because of their part in the ecosystem, but we don't care about any of the other animals that are affected.
The fish don't even have, they don't speak. They have no personality until the second movie,
Mm-hmm.
in which we have krill characters.
Mm-hmm.
But it's portrayed very negatively as the penguins being the only important part of their ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, we never see penguins suffering.
No, which is very strange. They talk quite a bit about how there's a food shortage and how there aren't as many fish as there used to be, how they're going hungry. But there's no, visual on this. You just hear them talk about it. You don't see penguin populations declining. You don't see any of the penguins really going hungry or being sick. They just talk about it, and that's it. And it's really kind of a hidden message in there. You have to really look for it and remember what they've said about it, or else you wouldn't notice that anything was wrong.
The only penguin we see suffering from the actions of the humans is Lovelace. Lovelace is the character that has the 6-pack around his neck, and he starts choking, and that's the reason why they go and they seek out the humans, or they call them aliens, which we'll talk about. But Lovelace is choked by the plastic 6-pack around his neck, and
that is
the driving force.
Yeah, that's what leads Mumble to decide to go try and get the attention of the humans.
So this is not an environmentalist story well done. There's no reason in the movie why we should care that humans are overfishing, because we don't see the impact that it has on these animals, other than them saying, oh, there's no fish. But they're not starving. They're still, they're still healthy looking penguins. And they're still having babies, and they're still singing their heart songs. An example of a story that does human impact on the environment really well is The Lorax, which is a classic story. The reason why we care so much about the environment in this movie is because we're shown the impact that humans have had on these animals. I mean, the brown barbaloots, the bears, they have to leave, and the fish get sick. The humming fish gets sick, and they can't sing anymore. And the swami swans, they can't fly. The swami swans, they can't fly.
And then by the end, the trees are gone, and what was once a beautiful paradise basically is smog and
Pollution.
and industrialization.
And none of the animals are there anymore. It's just a sad, barren, black, bleak wasteland. That's a lot of alliteration.
And the problem in Happy Feet, where they fail to achieve this, is that all of the animals are fine. Like, their talk about being hungry. Lovelace has a plastic ring around his neck, but, like, you don't see them leaving. You don't see them searching to go somewhere else. You don't see them dying. You don't see them getting sick.
Yeah. And it's still, beautiful. It's still beautiful to look at. The snow is white.
Beautiful white snow, clear water, everything like that.
Except when they get close to the humans, when you finally see the trash. But, just swimming around in the water, when there's all those long sequences of them swimming through the water's beautiful.
They had multiple occasions that they could have shown pollution. When the mothers go fish for the babies at the beginning of the movie, they could have not only said, like, oh, the fish were so scarce we barely brought back anything, but some of the emperor penguins could have had pollution stuck on their bodies, or pollution that they brought back to show. But they didn't. They just said, oh, there weren't very many fish. We'll just have to be hungry. There was another scene where Mumble and the penguins around his age are swimming, and no pollution is shown in this scene. Either the only thing we see in the water is a very small school of fish, and only a couple of penguins are able to eat, but it's not a very long scene. It's not very impactful. The only environmental sort of thing that we see is the fact that there aren't very many fish.
Yeah, and while watching this, it doesn't even register for me, at least, even when watching it again and again, it doesn't register for me that, oh, there's not a lot of fish. I just think,
oh, there's just a small school of fish swimming by.
Yeah, that's just what's around. I mean, if they swam further, that's where the fish would be. But
it really doesn't register unless you think about what they've been saying throughout the movie.
Number 2, our second theme of the movie is religion. Here, I will put a little bit of the religious imagery used in the film.
So, something that you see at the beginning of the movie during the opening sequence is an image of a giant penguin in space. It's kind of in the stars, and it's supposed to represent the Great Gwen, which is the penguins' god.
Their deity.
It's their deity, yeah. And this image appears again not much later when the male penguins are all huddled together and chanting. They're chanting to bring the sun back, following the example of who I suppose is supposed to be the religious leader, Noah. And there's a large penguin that seems to be some sort of image in either the Aurora Borealis or in the sun or something like that.
Or just in their imaginations.
But the Great Gwen is described to be the one who brings them their fish, the one who, like, gives them fish. And everything they do, they often tie it back to the Great Gwen. Mumble's dancing, which is rejected by his culture throughout the movie, is said to be the cause of the food shortage by the elders.
They say this is the kind of backsliding that has brought the scarcity upon us. And they believe that Mumble's dancing has displeased the Great Gwen. So there's a group of penguins, the older penguins, and they are seemingly the leaders of the penguin colony, and they rule the penguins through, fear mostly.
And tradition, basically.
And tradition.
Not people, but the penguins just believing what has always been passed down to them. One thing that one of the penguins says that very clearly shows that the Great Gwen is their god is only the Great Gwen can give and take away. I believe this is said at the beginning of the movie when they've got all the male penguins with their eggs huddled together, like, praying, essentially, for the sun to come back and for the end of the Antarctic winter.
And, again, when Mumble talks about how he believes, because of his interactions with the Skua and with Lovelace, that the shortage is not caused by the Great Gwen punishing the penguins, but instead by aliens, which is humans, in the movie. And once again, the elders are like, only the Great Gwen can give and take away. And it's very clear that the Great Gwen is their deity.
And then later, something that is odd that's shown is Mumble is brought back to Antarctica by the humans after his time in the zoo, and he tells his story. He says that he was taken by the aliens, and the elders say, there's no such thing as aliens, you're lying, basically, like, the Great Gwen is all there is. And then Mumble shows that he has a tracker on his back, and the elders say, you've led the aliens to us. And at this point, all of the other penguins, starting with Mumble, say, you said that the aliens weren't real, you've contradicted yourself, you must have been, like, lying about everything, basically.
Which is stupid.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah. That was a really, really ridiculous part of the movie when all the penguins immediately turned on them. A slip of the tongue does not a liar make, I think. And, proof of something else does not completely disprove, their whole religion.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people in the Christian community were offended. Not a lot. I won't say a lot,
but some people in the Christian community were offended by this movie. One article that we will also link below said something along the lines of, the elder penguins are vulture-like and clearly meant to represent the pious leaders of the church, basically saying that the creators of the movie wanted you to have a negative association with the elders by calling them vulture-like. However, something that we've noticed is that they don't look like vultures, they really just look like elderly penguins. When penguins get older, their backs start to hunch up a little bit and their heads kind of tilt down the way that they are in the movie.
And especially when you consider that these penguins are supposed to be starving. That completely, of course you wouldn't know that unless you watched the full movie and paid close attention to the hints. But if you consider that these penguins are supposed to be starving, maybe that's why they kind of look more scraggly and their feathers aren't as beautiful. But penguins live up to 20 years in the wild, and some sources have said that they have observed penguins living almost 50 years, which is a long time for a bird to live, and you would expect that bird to not look as cute and cuddly and fluffy as the younger penguins who are only a year old in the movie.
And specifically, I think that in that article they were referencing Noah, the leader of the elder penguins. But something that we do know is that Noah is probably one of the oldest penguins in this colony. He has lived completely through the generations of Mumble's parents, through Mumble's generation, and in the second movie he's still alive when Mumble's generation has children. So he's clearly an old penguin, even probably compared to the other elders.
A long, long time for a penguin to live. When you consider, how long it takes for penguins to reach their sexual maturity and then also have children.
Yeah, it takes a few years for penguins to reach sexual maturity.
Lovelace!
Lovelace is basically supposed to be like a televangelist sort of caricature. He answers questions in exchange for money, which in the Adelie penguin, and he's a rockhopper penguin, but he answers questions for the Adelie penguins, and they give him pebbles, which are equivalent to money in their culture. He's shown to be a very wealthy penguin. He has a whole pile of pebbles. And something else that you see about him is he has the plastic ring around his neck, which we mentioned earlier, but he says that it is a talisman that was gifted to him by the mystic beings who now speak to him, and he will answer your questions. And they will answer any questions that you have through him if you pay him.
And the issue with this is that some people have compared Lovelace to a televangelist, which, I mean, I believe we both kind of agree that that is something that is comparable to Lovelace's interactions with the Adelie penguins. Lovelace, when answering the questions, he fakes an interaction with the mystic beings and he speaks in tongues, which is interesting.
And then later in the movie it is revealed to Mumble and the group of Adelie penguins that he's befriended that Lovelace was lying the whole time. The plastic ring is not a talisman, but rather glitter that was stuck around his neck while he was swimming one day.
Theme number 3.
Sexuality.
So this is the theme that I feel very strongly this movie could have done without.
Yeah, there is a lot to unpack here.
To begin with, right off the bat, from the very beginning, there's already a lot of sexual themes.
Yeah, the penguins all have, the emperor penguins, I should say, all have heart songs, and that's how they find their mate, is their heart song sort of matches up, like in, I don't know.
Yeah,
they don't have the
first,
same song.
Yeah. At first we were under the impression that the penguins were supposed to have the same heart song, but what I think it means is that they're rhythmically
aligned,
tempo-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're compatible songs. Like you could make a mashup out of them,
which Norma Jean and Memphis, Mumble's parents, do at the very start of the film. They sing Heartbreak Hotel and Kiss, and they make a mashup of it, which is haunting.
It is haunting.
Yeah.
The song Kiss, which I don't know if you have had the pleasure to listen to, is incredibly inappropriate to include in a children's movie.
Mm-hmm. And so are many of the other songs. There is a part where they say, "Let's talk about eggs, baby." They're singing that. I think that there's a part where they sing, "I like big eggs and I cannot lie."
I like big feathers.
I like big feathers and I cannot lie. Something like that.
Something along those lines. And
there are many other examples of this. If you look up a list of the songs and read some of their lyrics, you would see what we mean.
And the thing is, these songs play a major role in the courtship rituals, which, I mean, in the animal kingdom is sex. And I understand the need for the songs to be love songs, but I don't understand the need for the songs to be so incredibly inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's clearly understood that they're songs about mating. They talk about mating, even I think using the word mating a lot in this movie, but there was no need for the songs to be so explicitly sexual in a human way. They really could have done without that, among other things. But specifically with the songs, they had the option to use just regular love songs for all the penguins, and they didn't. They used a lot of very sexual, very explicit songs. And the parts that were too explicit, they censored out with penguin puns, basically. Which was weird.
It was funny. They said, funny. "Let's talk about eggs, baby," instead of sex. So stupid. Another thing from the very beginning is the very, very sexual Norma Jean, who is Mumble's mother. Norma Jean has a rockin' penguin bod.
Norma Jean and then later in the film, Gloria, both have very curvy, humanized bodies, and they're both seen as incredibly attractive by the male penguins within their generation.
And you can identify female penguins by looking for the penguin breasts, which, if you know anything about penguins, you know that penguins don't have breasts. They're not mammals. They're birds. They don't have them.
The penguins are given very slim midsections and are made to look very curvy, very human body types.
I don't want to say breasts. I want to say tits. Penguins don't have tits, okay? It's not necessary.
It's very strange. But yes, Norma Jean is a very sexualized penguin at the start of the movie.
You can't. I don't want to say sexualized penguin.
She is. No, she calls Memphis daddy multiple times.
Say it in the voice. Daddy, daddy, daddy. Anyway, she does. She calls Memphis daddy multiple times, and not in reference exactly to his
State
patronage,
of fatherhood.
yeah, to their child.
It would be one thing if Norma Jean was talking to Mumble and said, "Oh, where's your daddy at?" No, she walks up to Memphis when Mumble is not near him and says, "Oh, daddy," and then looks around and says, "Where's the baby?"
That's so good, Cora.
Thank you.
She does do that, and she does it in this absolutely
Marilyn Monroe,
breathy. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
It makes one very uncomfortable to hear a penguin say, "Oh, daddy," and then snuggle up together, and then, you know, you just have to watch it, and you just have to put up with it, and it's not cool. I don't want to do it. I'm a good person. I didn't sign up for this.
Another thing that's weird between Norma Jean and Memphis is when Norma Jean returns from the fishing trip with the other female penguins, Mumble is hungry, so she starts regurgitating a fish into his mouth, and she's making gagging and choking sounds. And when she begins making these sounds, Memphis says, "Oh, I love the way she does that."
As a child, I'm sure you would disregard that, but hearing that as an adult
is very gross.
Yeah, it's very
to say
unsettling.
the least.
Another big one for this movie is there's a scene between Gloria and Mumble that we will show you.
Yeah.
And we'll just let you enjoy it regular time, and then we'll break it down for you. So here it is, regular time. They're leaping out of the water after their first fishing trip.
Now, I don't know if you noticed what was wrong with that, but here it is again in slow-mo.
We're gonna break it down for you.
Yep.
Even add in a little freeze frame. Right there.
So, clearly, these penguins are in various sex positions.
Very explicit. Look at that.
There's one more.
Give it time.
And possibly a fourth one.
We're not sure what that one's called.
Yeah. But it is very strange. I don't understand why they felt the need to include the penguins in these positions.
Yeah,
in this movie.
Rewatching it, I think the first time I rewatched it, after all those years, rewatching it again, it's just a lot to see as an adult who, I mean,
had no memory of it.
Yeah.
Like that.
I had no idea, and there's so much more to the movie as well, but watching that with Cora, we had to pause it and go back and be like, did we really just see what we thought we saw? Did those penguins really just land in like 3 or 4, maybe even 5?
I really don't know.
A
lot of
different sex positions.
Just in a row.
In a row, on the big screen, for everyone to see.
Mm-hmm. And I know that, children know about sex, they know what it is, but there's no reason that they need to be seeing stuff like that explicit on screen. I don't think as a parent I would have been thrilled to be seeing that at a family movie, especially if I had maybe a little bit older child who really knew what those were among some younger children.
Yeah, especially, it's especially haunting to see these, I'm sorry, I'll stop. It's especially haunting to see these adorable, cute, singing, dancing, like, lovable little penguins in these very explicit human
human sex
positions. These are, if it would be different if it were like an Animal Planet type style deal, but it's not.
No.
Okay, we can move on to another one.
Yeah.
Are we ready to see another?
Another clip involves also Mumble and Gloria. This is the part where Gloria's heart song and Mumble's tap dancing have been shown to line up.
So here's this scene, delightful, a little bit of grinding action, and then...
Oh my God.
Let's slow it down.
Now, I don't know if you noticed what was wrong there, but there was some butt slapping, some grinding action.
That they were both very into.
Yes. This is all especially weird and gross when you consider that Mumble has not lost all of his down feathers. He's a late bloomer among the penguins, so he is not a sexually mature penguin, and Gloria is. And it's a very weird and strange and gross implication.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go deep into penguin research, like
which we did.
Yeah, you're gonna have to dig deep to kind of come up with those implications and assumptions about this movie, but that is a very haunting thing to consider.
It is a very weird thing to consider, especially when you think about the fact that the animators and the scriptwriters surely knew that about the penguins. Like, it was not an accident. So we're gonna go back to Lovelace under this theme as well. You may have seen, if we put in a clip of him on his pile of rocks, that there were a lot of female Adelie penguins surrounding him. And there's a point when Mumble comes up to ask his question that Lovelace says to Mumble to go forth and multiply. And then he continues, in fact, why don't we all go forth and multiply? And the other penguins, the other Adelie penguins say, oh, is it mating season already? I hadn't realized. And they all start to leave and partner up. And at this point, Lovelace says, and I will return to my couch of perpetual indulgence. And he and the female penguins start to walk off. And Lovelace asks, okay, who's first? And the female penguins all go, me, 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 me.
One of the issues that I personally have with this situation, one of the things that I do not like about this situation, Lovelace is a rockhopper penguin, and the group of female penguins that hang around with him are Adelie penguins. And the implication in this movie is that Lovelace is going to go and mate with the Adelie penguins, which
he even says, not all at once, ladies, very quietly.
And there's a part where when they're walking away, one of the female penguins makes a very explicit sexual sound, and Lovelace goes, oh, make that sound again. And it's traumatizing.
Yep.
It's a lot to unpack.
Watch this movie. We mentioned earlier that Lovelace accepts pebbles as payment for his services. His services being answering questions for the other penguins in a televangelist sort of way. But in Adelie penguin mating rituals, they actually present each other with pebbles, and they use it to build nests. So this is also sort of a sexual implication. It shows that he has the biggest nest, which is why he has attracted the most females.
Yep.
But we did want to mention that
Adelie penguins, this is a real thing, Adelie penguins accept the pebbles in exchange for sex or for mating. And in some cases, a female penguin will accept a pebble and do the mating dance and not, is it copulate?
Mm-hmm.
They'll do the mating dance and they won't actually have sex with the male penguin. So in the Adelie penguin world, penguin prostitution and penguin strippers
are a thing.
They're real. Isn't that a fun fact? High five. Fun fact. There are other quotes from the movie that I would like to share with you. One being from the giant Russian female penguin that Mumble is taken to when he cannot sing in school. His parents take him to this female penguin, and she tries to teach him how to sing, and she fails because he can't. And one of her quotes is, do you want to like find a woman? Do you want to make the egg?
She says it with a Russian accent, and she phrases it like, you want to make egg, to which Mumble responds, oh yes.
Very eagerly. It's
horrifying.
Oh yes, you want to make egg?
You want to make egg?
Oh yes.
God.
And then, point 4, aliens.
This is going to be a brief point. We already kind of touched on it. But there are a couple of times where aliens are brought up, specifically the skua birds talk about aliens. One skua bird says that he was kidnapped by the aliens and they put a tag on his leg. Mumble calls the humans aliens after he is taken to the zoo. And all the other penguins also believe them to be aliens. But I think the main reason we wanted to talk about this was mostly to bring up
the UFO.
The UFO.
Okay, so Cora is a very skilled researcher, and she found a earlier
draft of the script, and I read all of it.
And tell us what it included.
And at the end of the movie, the closing scene, you see a screen with a sort of like like a crosshair target sort of thing focused on the Earth. And you hear voices talking, and they're like, I found a species on this planet. One of the other voices says, oh, but we already knew about them. First voice says, no, not the humans. Look at this. And they zoom in into Antarctica, and they show Mumble and all of the penguins in his colony dancing together. And the voices are kind of like, oh, charmed, and you know what, we'll just let this planet be. We won't destroy it and take its resources. We'll move on to the next one. And as they walk away from the screen, you see that their shadows are in the shape of giant penguins, and one of them stops and does a little dance. And so the ending sort of implication, and some other stuff comes up throughout the film too, is that the Great Gwyn is these aliens, and it's not a religious thing. There really is like these higher beings. And they're like Mumble. They dance and they are penguins. It's very, very cute.
It's very charming, and I am so very distraught and disappointed that they didn't include this amazing plot point with the real aliens.
Yeah, they really should have kept it in. But something that we noticed while watching the movie is a clip that we will include.
We watched it quite a few times, and the most recent time that we watched it, the last time that we watched it, we noticed you'll have to look closely and bear with us, and we're not crazy.
We'll play it a couple times. We'll try to like highlight where it is on screen.
So there's a scene in the movie where all the little penguin chicks are at little penguin chick school and they're singing, and Mumble is in the back of the class because he doesn't sing, and he's staring into the clouds daydreaming, and what do we see in the clouds but a spaceship?
And we will play this clip a second time, slow it down just right here, and we'll highlight exactly where it is that we see a spaceship. But once you see it, it looks very clear.
And also, there's an abundance of space imagery in this movie. The very first scene in the movie, or the opening sequence where they show the actors and actresses in the movie, is in space.
And there's a point where they zoom out from the Earth while Mumble's in the zoo, and you see space, you see the stars.
Twinkling.
Twinkling, yeah.
There's a very strong alien theme in this movie that does not have any kind of resolution, and I hate it. And I think it could have been better. It's so cool, and the movie has all the good setup for there to be real life aliens in this movie, and they just blow it off.
We were so upset about this that we could not just have it as a plot point. We had to put it on the big list. So there you go.
The
Aliens should have been included in the last scene. I don't understand why they weren't.
It could have been like 20 seconds.
Yeah. It was a short scene. Took up like half a page. And now we've come to possibly, to us, the most controversial point. That is point number 5, the dropping of the egg.
The dropping of the egg, or what happens to Mumble after the dropping of the egg, has been compared to several things. In our research, in our reading, we've seen it compared to several things. Primarily what I've seen it compared to has been ADHD or a learning disability, and Cora has seen it compared to homosexuality. We disagree.
Yeah, we don't think it's any of those things.
No, none of the above. We believe that the story would have been much stronger and much better and more impactful if Memphis had never dropped the egg. When he dropped the egg, and the egg was left out in the freezing cold and buried in the frigid snow, this is comparable to a teratogen, and a teratogen is something that can harm an infant baby while in the womb, which would be comparable to Mumble.
Yeah, this would be something like a mother consuming substances that would be harmful to the baby. I'm sure that you can think of examples on your own, but basically that is what people are getting at. And by dropping the egg, by having this happen, by carrying that implication, it really sets back the movie, we think, as far as like strong narrative, strong plot, because it's not just the implication among the Emperor Penguin culture is that it's not just the way that Mumble is, it's something that happened to him.
Yes. And it's particularly offensive in our minds when people compare this to homosexuality, because basically what people are saying is that what people are saying when they compare this story to a story of homosexuality is that your sexuality is something that is done to you rather than something that is just part of who you are.
And so in this movie, Mumble's dancing, no matter what you're comparing it to, is something that the other penguins believe is done to him, not something that is just a part of him. He believes it to be something that is just a part of him. When he finds out that his egg was dropped, he says, "No, Dad, it's not your fault. This is just the way I am." But none of the other penguins ever really bring this up. No one else ever really supports him with this. And it's never really clarified. Like, the audience is left just to believe that, no, Memphis dropped the egg and that's why Mumble is this way.
Yeah. And at the beginning, during the scene when Memphis drops the egg, we hear the beautiful Robin Williams narrating, and he says, you know, there's one rule among penguins: never, ever, ever drop the egg. And this just goes to show, you know, how serious an offense this is in the penguin realm, dropping the egg. And it could be comparable to a teratogen, like how we view, like
drinking
or smoking. People who are comparing Mumble's dancing to a disability fail to realize that it actually does not meet the standards of a disability as defined by the Americans with Disabilities Act. So the definition of an individual with a disability is a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities of such individual. Major life activities include things like walking, things like eating, breathing, and also reproducing. And one could say that his inability to sing a heart song is a
part of the reproductive process.
Yes.
However, Mumble actually does partner up with Gloria. His tap dancing is comparable to a heart song, and in both the earlier draft of the script and in the sequel, Happy Feet 2, you see that Mumble has a son and he is in fact able to reproduce.
Yes. And I can understand why some people would want to compare this to ADHD. I've read several views on it where people say, Mumble's tap dancing and his inability to sit still is what makes it comparable. However, it is my belief that it would have been a much better story if we had just let it be something that he was born with instead of something that
needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
In the eyes of his culture.
The penguins who demonize Mumble at the beginning of the movie simply accept him at the end of the movie. They barely interact with Mumble. They do not get to know him or learn about him or his humanity or penguinity. Instead, they dance only because they think it's the only way to save them from the aliens. Children deserve to be given stories that empower individuals who have disabilities, like Emmanuel's Dream, an excellent story about a boy who was born with one functioning leg who cycled 400 miles across Ghana in 2001. He inspired millions with this famous ride and still continues to fight for the rights of individuals with disabilities today. This is a true story, by the way, about a real man who made a real difference in the world and is actually fighting for the rights of individuals who have disabilities. So overall, we are not a fan of this underdeveloped idea for a movie.
Just something that I thought about was that if they felt that the dropping of the egg was necessary, I think it would have been stronger also if they had revealed it to Mumble earlier, and possibly when he went and met the Adelie Penguins, he could have been like, there's something wrong with me. Like, my egg was dropped, I'm not right, I don't fit in. And the Adelie Penguins could have been like, you seem perfectly fine to us. And then he could have developed self-confidence and been like, they're right. I was just born this way, and that's okay.
Yeah. And that is something we notice in the movie, that in the Emperor Penguin colony, the Emperor Penguins view Mumble as different and view him as potentially having a disability. But in the other penguin culture that we see, the Adelie Penguins, they don't notice anything particularly different about Mumble. They immediately love his dancing. They're like, what's that? And then when he dances, they're like, oh, cool. And they just kind of move past it. And then they're always like, oh, this guy's so accidentally cool.
And that will take us into our plot section and things that don't really make sense. The first thing being that Mumble is not the only Emperor Penguin who dances. And we have clips to prove it to you.
Proof.
They all dance. He's just the only one who tap dances until the
jerks.
end. Mm-hmm. They're hypocrites.
The only thing that they don't like about Mumble is that he dances without singing, because these jerks sing and dance their little hearts out the whole freaking movie. Let's look at some clips. let's take a looky-loo. Here's a clip of Norma Jean and these male penguins trying to get at her, moving all around her. Look at that. What do you call that? Rhythmic movement there. It's dancing. Oh, and what do you call that? That Memphis is doing right there. Dabbing. Alright, now here we are.
They're singing Somebody to Love. This is all the penguins in Mumble's generation.
Now here's Gloria and her backup singers and dancers. Look at them.
They're dancing. They're all dancing.
Look at them. What do you call that? Dancing. And then, in a moment, after we stop with this beautiful space imagery, more.
Aurora Borealis. Gorgeous.
We pan down, and what do we see?
What is that we're zooming in on? Could it be dancing?
Ugh. This is horrible. And
look at
this
every
crowd.
single penguin is waving their arms, moving around.
Dancing. And they don't like Mumble. Why? Because he dances.
And here is another scene incredibly similar to that of Norma Jean in Memphis, we might also add, where Gloria and Mumble are dancing together.
So those are just a select few tidbits.
Mm-hmm.
I included that clip because I liked it, because it was funny, and this guy comes and shakes his butt at Gloria. LOL. But those are just a select few clips that we picked to show you that Mumble is not the only penguin that dances in this movie.
He's the only one that tap dances, but
yeah,
I mean, until the end when they all like join his cause.
The Great Gwyn just hates tap dancing.
Yeah.
He hates
he's got beef with tap dancing. Also, story-wise, this movie's kind of confusing because usually when you have multiple plot threads running, you'll have different characters taking the helm at each one. There are examples of this in most popular movies. I don't think I need to give you examples. But in this one, Mumble is the leader of all the plot threads, and so when the environmental things start to come up, the dancing and the rejection from his culture almost disappears for a while, especially when he's in the zoo, other than a brief snippet where he's imagining his family. But it's very strange.
Another thing about it is these themes that we mentioned are completely disconnected from each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you could make completely separate movies about the environment and about aliens and about how, Mumble is different from the rest of the penguins because of this certain thing that he dances. You could make a whole movie, and it doesn't even have to include things about the environment.
As far as clarity of the narrative, there are quite a few things that are very unclear. Mumble washes up on the shores of Australia, and then later we see the camera zooming out, and he is in Florida, which doesn't make sense in this movie. However, if you read the earlier draft of the script like I did, there's about a 3-sentence scene where it's basically Mumble is put in a box, the box is put on a plane, the plane flies somewhere, which totally made it make sense. And another thing that happens is Mumble goes back to Antarctica after being in the zoo in Florida, and he just shows up there. They don't show him being sent there either, which they also included in the earlier draft of the script. I don't understand why they took those out. They're such brief scenes that would have made the story so much clearer. It's very confusing when you see him just appearing in these places.
And watching it again, when I first watched it again, the scene is so quick, where Mumble is in the zoo and then immediately he's taken back to Antarctica, and there's no clarification. And watching it again, I was like, do we need to take it back? I rewound it because I was like, what happened? And there's no clarification, and it doesn't really make sense why they would release them.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
Because clearly this penguin is bringing so much revenue to their zoo. There were so many people, the phones were ringing off the hook in one scene where they're like, you gotta come see this dancing penguin.
It doesn't make any sense for them to release him.
Yeah. Any zoo I know
would have kept him.
Whatever message this movie is trying to send to us, which we are not able to figure out what they're trying to tell us, other than humans are bad. I suppose.
Humans bad, penguin good.
Let's say it together. Humans bad, penguin good.
That's it. That's Happy Feet. Bye.
Signing off. Penguinity.